Hey everybody, today we'll actually be talking about a feature that's trickling down from professional level cinema cameras down into prosumer and consumer mirrorless and DSLR cameras called log video profile. See, log video profile is a way of extracting the most tonal information out of the camera's sensor and baking it into the image so that you can later grade it in post and have more flexibility. First, let's talk about why log video profile actually exists. See, the human eye has about 22 to 25 stops of dynamic range, allowing us to see a wide variety of very bright and very dark things at the same time. Cameras, on the other hand, have somewhere in the ballpark range of usually about 14 stops across the board. Well, when you're actually shooting with that, your image is baked in and you don't have much flexibility in post. Logarithmic video attempts to fix this by making the image that you get inside of the camera more like your eye and giving you more flexibility. See, if you go from 0 to 100 on a graph, linearly as the camera sees it, it'll be from 0 to the blackest blacks, from 100 being the whitest whites, where you actually start to have highlight clipping. Logarithmic video instead changes this linear curve into a logarithmic one, allowing you to boost out those tones in the middle and allowing you a slightly more dynamic range from your camera. The trade-off of which unfortunately gives you a washed out image, but requires you to open it up inside of an editing program and either apply a log to Rec. 709 LUT, giving you the natural colors that you'd normally get, or whatever favorite LUT you normally use to color grade and create the theme you're going for. So originally, log format was married with cinema cameras that had higher tier codecs and the bit depth and data required to actually push the grade around. Now, I'd recommend that you bare minimum have a camera that offers a 10-bit codec. Because if you shoot with log and 8-bit and you apply any LUT to start with, you'll start to notice things like banding, artifacting, and pixelation as you push the codec around. So a real-life use case scenario is generally when you have a scene with a high degree of dynamic range in it. Say the subject is standing near the window and you want to retain the information both on the inside of the building and the outside, like in this image here. Unfortunately, this does require a little bit more time in post, but the results, in my opinion, are perfectly worth it if you're doing something that doesn't require a quick delivery. This does not mean that you can skimp on getting exposure properly, and in fact means that you need to focus even more on nailing the exposure in camera to avoid things like noisy shadows or blown out highlights. So what will log actually look like on your camera? Well, it comes in a variety of different flavors for each manufacturer, whether it's S-Log, F-Log, D-Log, or in the case of the camera we're shooting here in the studio, Blackmagic film. So we'll actually show you the best way to expose for log in general across the board with all different camera manufacturers, because in reality, the actual process is pretty much the same for each camera. So step one is to obviously set the log format picture profile before shooting. Make sure you look in the manual because some cameras actually have different types of log curves built into them, and find whichever one best suits your scenario. Step two is to learn how to expose to the right, which means instead of exposing to the middle like you would in a normal picture profile, you want to expose until your image starts clipping typically. Then you can actually bring it down to taste and you'll be able to adjust those lighting values in post. You can either do this obviously by stopping down on your aperture, lowering your ISO, or if you're not following the 180-degree shutter rule, changing your shutter speed. The easiest way I find to do this here at the studio is we set up zebras. For indoor shooting, I recommend something like 70 to 80% clipping, and for outdoor shooting, I recommend something like 90 to 100% clipping. Normally, when you pick a log profile in camera, it selects the most suitable ISO for you, but in order to get the most data, you'll want to look up what the native ISO of your camera is. That way, when you actually adjust that, you're making sure that you get the most information, and you can adjust other things either via an ND filter or your shutter speed or your aperture to make sure that you're not messing with the latitude of data that will normally be available to you in post by changing the native ISO. Finally, you'll actually want to start recording, and then you'll open up your footage in post. See, here's the next part that you'll actually want to pay attention to, is that you need to find a log to Rec. 709 LUT if you're originally intending to get the natural colors that you would get out of the camera and place those inside for a presentable image. Or you can use whatever your favorite LUT is and match footage. Now, something I want to point out here that a lot of people seem to get confused is that log, for instance, does not automatically mean higher picture quality. Log is really only useful in scenarios where you have high dynamic range. Say you're shooting outside on a bright day and you want to make sure you get the most detail inside of those shadows and also without clipping the sky. That's a perfect scenario where you'd want to use log. But if you're shooting in a low light scenario, for instance, say a documentary style shoot where somebody's walking through a dark corridor and you're following them run and gun style, you don't even want to bother with log. There's not going to be any information that you're gaining from actually shooting in log. You only want to shoot it when the difference between the brightest brights and the darkest darks is substantial enough to warrant that actual difference. And as always, if you're having any issues with shooting in log or have any camera-specific questions, make sure to hit up the comments section below so we can help you get the best looking footage out of your device. And in addition to that, we're always looking to help out our fellow filmmakers, so make sure to hit up the comments if you want any reviews, tutorials, or technique breakdowns. And you can find everything we use to film these inside of the description below. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever to hear our story as we go through our filming adventures here at Skyfeather Studios. But until then, we'll see you next time.